Ladies and gentlemen of the class of 2024, it won't be necessary to wear sunscreen. Hi, I'm Scott Ott with Bill Whittle and Stephen Green, and this episode of Right Angles brought to you by the members at BillWhittle.com. And gentlemen, you're probably too young to remember, but years ago, there was a columnist who wrote a fake graduation or not valedictory, but like a guest speaker commencement address that started off with members of the class of whatever year, wear sunscreen. And then it was just a bunch of advice like that. Well, this year, good news, most graduates from major universities around the country, or many, will not have to wear sunscreen because they won't be outdoors. They will be in little graduation ceremonies indoors if they can. Columbia University taking the lead in canceling its main commencement ceremony, but is going to go ahead with smaller graduation ceremonies around the school for different groups or different colleges within the university. And this is happening nationwide with various universities saying because of the concern about protests and violence at these ceremonies related to the war in Gaza, they have decided to take this moment to essentially hide from the potential terror of having their graduation ceremonies disrupted. Stephen Green, I don't know about you, but college was hard, and by just my bare escape from the requirements and getting to that point where I could be in Beaver Stadium at Penn State with tens of thousands of other people celebrating that event together was a memory that sticks with me to this day. And I think about all those college students, especially if you're going to some prestigious university, who were looking forward to that grand event and now will be huddling in some auditorium behind locked doors and secured locations with guards and cops on duty to protect them because of, Steve, free speech. What do you think about this?
Yeah, free speech. Remember, as long as you remember this simple formula, everything else becomes clear. When the right speaks, that's violence. When the left commits violence, that's just speech. And you keep that in mind, and everything else begins to make sense. Although there's been enough violence now that some of the schools have taken notice and have started clearing up some of these violent protests, like they probably should have done much sooner. But that's neither here nor there. Let me backtrack a little bit to high school. I was up until 10th grade when I started Missouri Military Academy. Between between 7th and 9th grade, 6th and 9th grade, I was just a terrible student. There was all kinds of trouble at home that was affecting me emotionally, and so I didn't care enough to actually work at school or any of that stuff. But I turned it around in the space of one semester. I went from being a C and B student with the occasional D and even sometimes an F or two, to becoming an A and B student and mostly A's. And that was in the space of one semester. And when graduation came around, or commencement as Missouri Military Academy called it, this was a 3-day event. And parents, it was a boarding school, so parents flew in from all over the country. 3-day event. Friday night was the big speech contest, which I won. Saturday was all the academic awards along with a bunch of other things, and me by myself won like half the academic awards. So there was this half was me, and this half was literally everybody else in my senior class. Okay, so on the actual graduation ceremony, the commencement ceremony on Sunday that wrapped things up around noontime, we're out there in our dress uniforms. The Missouri May sun is beating down on us. It's a beautiful, glorious day. And it's just one of the proudest moments of my life. And it wasn't even a moment. This thing dragged on for 2.5 days, right? And I just got to sort of bask in this glory that I turned this stuff around so quickly. Couldn't believe it. Now imagine you didn't struggle for a few semesters at a high school, but you spent $65,000 a semester. That's what Columbia University costs. I looked this up. $65,000 a semester. That's a pretty nice car. At the end of 4 years, that's the equivalent of a pretty decent house that you've put into your sheepskin. And if you've gone to graduate school, if you're getting if you're getting your master's or your PhD, now you are actually looking at a nice house that has been condensed into this little sheet of paper, or sheepskin, I guess, maybe they still use that they hand you at what is supposed to be one of the proudest moments of your life, certainly one of the most expensive moments of your life. And now imagine that this glorious ceremony that you were expecting to cap, or cap and gown, your 4 years or 6 years, 7 years of expense and struggle at Columbia University has been reduced to something held in what folding chairs in a cafeteria, whatever the hell it is they're doing. They have taken away what is supposed to be the proudest moment of your life, because they couldn't end the violence on campus because the professors, too many of them, the administration, too many of them, support that.
Bill Whittle, I'm just thinking, at my advanced age, and I have kids who are all old enough to have been through college, and I just think, can you imagine all your hopes and dreams for your kids? I mean, it's bad enough that the kids who have put so much into it, many of them are now being cheated out of this thing that they had looked forward to. But imagine being a parent and you're going to travel to the school to see this graduation ceremony, and maybe grandma or grandpa's coming along with you, and some people have decided that you can't have that. And you may have participated in some of the financial process to get your kid through the school, and now you're going to go into some classroom or some auditorium somewhere and have this scaled down version of what you were expecting for this glorious moment for your young person. Bill, if you were in that circumstance, either as a student or as a parent, do you see yourself saying, thank goodness for free speech, and thank goodness for these people who are making their views known, because I don't care what happens to me as long as they get to shout at people?
That's exactly correct. On my right angle last week, I talked about the squelching campus unrest national champion Florida Gators, and how they basically simply made it crystal clear you have the right to speak on campus in a public space. You have the right to assemble. You have the right to hold up signs. And then we went through an entire list of all the things you're not allowed to do. And if you did those things, you would face a 3-year suspension and trespassed off the property. And any faculty members that were involved with this kind of violations were simply terminated, period. And that's how you handle these kind of things. But not only did I think Florida do it better than anybody else, Florida seems to be the only place that actually took these protests at what they are, which is a disruption of university life for the enormous majority of students who have nothing to do with these protests on one side or the other. It's this. Steve's really got the essence of it, because a significant number of people that have been arrested have been professors, and so you can't expect the university to enforce rules against rioting when they're in favor of the riots. So unfortunately, Scott, it's just another nail in the coffin of the university experience, which I believe stopped being viable at least 4 or 5 years ago. If you believe that there was a plan for the destruction of this country, I genuinely do, and it was the Frankfurt School, and these people made it very clear. The first thing you have to do is infiltrate the universities in order to raise a generation of people who are, willing to accept the idea of revolution. And you start with the journalism schools, because if you can start with the journalism schools and get them out first, then you can color the flow of information, and that'll help you downstream. But even if you don't believe in all of that, the fact of the matter is that universities have become indoctrination centers, and I suspect, Scott, that the actual death blow, was when they coupled student loans with the Affordable Care Act and made the federal government the entity responsible for making student loans. Stay with me on this. In the old days of the studio system, when Hollywood was Hollywood and Hollywood was pro-American, Hollywood studios owned the theaters, and their revenues came directly from their theaters. So if they were producing anti-American movies that people didn't go to, they would not get any revenues, and so they had their follow the money financial interest was to produce movies that people wanted to go see. Likewise for universities, if it was students who were going to banks to put up their own money, a university had to provide an education, or else there wouldn't be any students. But once student loans became part of the federal government, and once it became clear to universities that whether the students defaulted on the loans or not, they were going to get paid in full by Uncle Sam, then the university got cut off in the same way that the studios got cut off from making their customers happy. Now they could be as progressive and as shrill as they wanted to. Universities went from places that you would go to expand your mind into places where you would go to make sure that nothing new enters your horizon, or else it'll be run off a campus on a rail and the person tarred and feathered. But ultimately, to talk about the graduation ceremony, this is your reward. You know, your certificate on your wall is and that, by the way, is not worth what it used to be. There's no end of number of people who appear on TikTok or whatever saying, I've got 2 degrees from prestigious universities and I'm still a barista and I can't find a job. Well, you're partially responsible for this. But the emotional payoff is the graduation. The emotional payoff of being on a football team is winning the national championship and jumping around on the field for half an hour. That's the money. That's the return. And by taking that away, they're cheating these kids. And the worst of this, Scott, is that for many students whose college graduation is canceled because of these student protests, these are the exact same individuals whose high school graduations were canceled because of COVID. They didn't get a chance to have a high school graduation or go to the prom. And now this group of selfish, idiotic protesters who couldn't find Palestine on a map, have no idea which river and which sea they're talking about, are going to deprive them of a second chance. And the blame lies squarely with the administration of the universities that allowed this to happen, which is why I was so unbelievably proud of the University of Florida just simply saying, allowed, constitutional rights, any one of these things, 3-year suspension, termination of your employment. It's not hard to enforce the law if you're willing to enforce the law.
I don't know what universities and university administrators and professors think they're doing to prepare young people to function in the real world. But if they would look at their own lives, even within a university setting, they would realize that the tactics that they're encouraging and allowing on their campuses wouldn't work to accomplish what they want at work, for example. It seems like we have given up the ideas of Gandhi and King of exercising moral suasion by basically taking the high ground. These young people today, if you showed them a video of the gathering in Washington, D.C. in front of the Lincoln Memorial where Martin Luther King made his famous remarks, and you saw that huge crowd of largely very well-dressed people stretched out there for what looks like a mile into the distance, and hear that, wait a minute, nothing got trashed, property wasn't destroyed, nobody was being abused verbally. These people actually came and behaved in a civil manner, and yet were highly effective at accomplishing their goal of demanding civil rights. That's the whole idea of this peaceful protest movement that was kicked off many decades ago, is that you rise above your oppressor. You don't stoop to the level of your perceived oppressor. It seems like today the lesson being taught in many of America's universities, at least to a slice of the student body, I'm going to excuse the vast majority of students because I don't think they're getting this, but for the little slice of students who are involved in this kind of stuff, the moral suasion lesson is this: if you're not scared of me, I'm not being persuasive. And I think that's what they believe is going to be effective. Let's make things uncomfortable for everybody. Let's make a big scene. Let's cause disruption. Let's ruin people's dreams and expectations. And that way, somehow, people are going to go, yeah, you know what? I remember that guy who ruined my college graduation. I'm on his side now. I agree with what he's doing. Yeah, the guy who screwed my grandparents out of the opportunity to see me walk across the stage or to be there in that large gathering and see me with all the other students and realize that we had accomplished something great. We're going to cheat you, Grandpa and Grandma out of all of that, and that is going to endear us to these people. Whatever you may think about the political cause, and I am clearly not on board with their political cause, you can't help but believe that they are not getting an education at these universities if they think that somehow the political process involves becoming as great a disruption in other people's lives as possible and frankly threatening people in order to get your way. That's not a college education. That's an infantile tantrum. For Bill Whittle and Stephen Green, I'm Scott Ott. Thanks to the members at BillWhittle.com for making Right Angle possible.